Welcome to City Talk, the show about what's working, what's not, and what's next in the places in which we live. I'm Mary Rowe, and I lead Canada's Urban Institute. It's the summer of 2025. Woo-hoo! And we used to make jokes that summer was actually the season of construction. But in fact, what it's increasingly becoming is the season of wildfires, evacuations, smoke, inundations. It's becoming a topic about how hot is it, how smoky is it, and how's it affecting the community in which you live. This year, believe it or not, 2025 is the second worst year on record for wildfires, only second to 2 years ago, 2023. And thousands of people have been forced to leave their homes in Manitoba and Saskatchewan already this summer. And as we know, over the last few weeks, even rural Newfoundland, Musgrave Harbour is having fires where 1,000 people have been relocated recently. And the cascading effects of this aren't just the communities that are relocated, but as we know, the smoke blows, it affects air quality, it has all sorts of implications. And we know also that the impact of these intrusions have enormous potential for devastation of communities. If you look at Lytton, BC, or Fort McMurray, Alberta, and as the summer gets warmer everywhere, it's something that more and more communities are having to deal with. So how does a community rebuild after a wildfire? Are there lessons that we need to learn to help us prepare if it ever happens to the community near us? And how can we take steps to actually prevent these kinds of things? So joining us today is somebody right at Ground Zero in Jasper, Beth Sanders. She's the Director of Urban Design and Standards for the municipality there in Jasper, Alberta. Last July, 25,000 people were evacuated from Jasper. 2 days later, the fire swept through. Embers ended up igniting all sorts of buildings there, destroying about a third of the town, including entire neighborhoods. Beth is a planner and expert in these things. She's also an author of Nest City. So she is well acquainted with the challenges of mobilizing people to come together and solve these kinds of challenges. And we're really pleased to have her join us here on City Talk. Beth, thanks for joining us.
You bet, Mary. Happy to be here.
Just take me back a year to last summer when the fires broke out. Tell me what you remember.
The funny thing about what I remember is I was negotiating a new position with the Municipality of Jasper to start their brand new planning and development department because the town is in a national park. So the Planning and Development Authority actually rests with the national park, and the municipality and the town had been negotiating, let's start a planning and development department. And on Monday, July 22nd, I've got the written offer. We're just negotiating a couple things. I'm waiting for the call. I'm waiting for the call. I'm waiting for the call. And I'm like, something's up. And then, of course, I hear on the news that the town is evacuating. And then 2 days later, the town was on fire. And what's interesting from a climate resilience perspective is the fire, which was significant and huge, did not burn the town, but embers that flew in excess of 2 kilometers flew into the town. And then wherever they land, if it was ignitable, it ignited. And then Jasper lost 358 structures. So what ended up happening is a really quick decision. Yep, Beth's starting. Beth is going to start quicker than she was going to. And then we joined forces, myself, the team I started to assemble to be the department within the municipality, because we know how to think town. Planner type people know how to think town. Parks Canada knows how to think parks. And give my planner friends at Parks Canada a lot of credit. They just didn't have what they needed to think infrastructure, to think a lot of things. But it's been this beautiful partnership around, like, they're assembling people to get permits through, et cetera. We're working together to revisit, like, what are the policies we have in place that guide how we physically build. It's on nobody's agenda to have to reimagine their homes. And it's freaking complicated because there's insurance questions, there's what do I do questions, what stage of life am I in? So the emotional toll for residents is also really high. And then, of course, Jasper, like, the economic recovery for Jasper as a place is all about tourism. So there's a lot of people out there think, oh, I shouldn't go, when actually the most important thing to do right now to visit Jasper is the thing to do. There's lots to do still. And the economic recovery is important because if that doesn't happen, then the businesses aren't there, the livelihoods aren't there, people aren't there. And it's a multifaceted, messy situation. That's kind of the recap I'd give you, Mary.
Okay, so you're thrust into this situation, this role. Obviously, for the first several months, it's relief. It's supporting families and businesses that have had extraordinary challenge. How far into the process do you start to be able to have bandwidth to talk about recovery and what it is you will rebuild? How far into the process does that have to be?
Well, my position was kind of unique in that my hands-on work was not relief to people.
Mm-hmm.
So when reentry happened in September or August, a whole bunch of colleagues were looking after like human beings. I've got a whole slew of colleagues that were thinking about, okay, well, where do we put interim housing? What do we do for some transitional short-term housing? My team and I helped think through the locations or how do we prioritize housing people? The locations in Jasper where we have now interim housing, we're like, it's more important to house people than it is to house their cars. Their cars can go on the street. We want to have homes for people. So we're like, we're running this experiment. Let's see how it works. Let's get as many people housed as possible. That was our imperative. But while my colleagues are doing all of this, especially in the early days, like I literally would show up, I'm in the incident command center and I'm watching everything. And I know everybody's kind of like, wonder what she's doing. or, and then, so the fire was end of July. And by the end of October, we had what we produced, my parks colleagues and my team, a rebuilding guide, which involved, we identified policy things that needed to change to enable rebuild. So imagining, someone's lost their home or their business, the building is gone. We know that the first thing they need to do is talk to their insurer and figure out what kind of coverage they have. When they know that, they're going to start thinking about designing a new building. And when they start thinking about designing a new building, we want the rules to be the best rules that they can be to enable a better future for Jasper. So really quickly, what we did is we went through the land use policy. So not a land use bylaw because it's Parks Canada, it's a land use policy. And we're identifying, okay, well, what kinds of levers can we pull to make the town more fire resilient? Okay, no more cedar shingles. Those are out of the rules. It used to be an encouraged thing, not so much anymore. What kinds of materials do we want buildings to be clad in? How fire resistant do we want it to be? And then we also lightened up some of the rules. Jasper has been in a housing crisis for decades, where the vacancy rate has been at or near zero for decades.
Wow.
So how do we adjust the rules to allow for some very modest density increases? So we made some of those changes, and so that people, when they're applying for their permits, could start to rethink how their rebuild could contribute to the well-being of the community, with no expectation that everybody must do it. But if somebody wants a secondary suite or a garage suite, they could do it. Or if they wanted to build
as of right, if they wanted to.
So, or if they want to, okay, I have a single detached dwelling, I'd like to have a duplex with secondary suites and a garage suite. Awesome. So we wanted to set people up that if they could do that, then they could. And also if they didn't want to, no harm, no foul. Because we also recognize that, some people, insurance coverage is different, financial resourcing is different for different households. Don't want to rule anybody out of not being able to rebuild, because that's not compassionate either. But how do we adjust the rules so that some more housing could happen?
I'm assuming there was resistance to some of this. I mean, there's a reason why. Hard to imagine what NIMBY looks like in a devastated community where there obviously a level of heightened urgency that we need something to happen. But was there some NIMBY there? Were there people that just wanted it to go back to exactly what it was before?
Of course. For folks that lost their homes, say, like, they didn't ask for that.
No.
They've never had a desire to build a new building from scratch and organize all of that, or negotiate with insurance companies. Hot tip for everybody: please review your insurance policy. Just do it.
You heard it here first. Yeah,
it's tedious, but do it, because there's actually have a conversation with a human being. Run for some scenarios, like, if this happened, am I covered? If this happened, am I covered? Is it just the value of what it was, or guaranteed replacement? Just learn the lingo and make sure you've got the right thing. It's a game changer when you experience loss. So what we have to be full of care of as planners, though, is every person who walks in the door imagining, like trying to figure out how the rules work. Like, what can I build? What can't I build? Can I build exactly what I had? Like any town, there's neighborhoods that were built in different eras. Land use bylaws can get really complicated and tricky, but it's a useful exercise we're finding to imagine you're in an emergency situation and you want to adjust the rules to simplify how redevelopment can take place. Imagining that somebody wants to build their home and it's, 10 centimeters too close to the property line, and that's a make or break thing for someone's emotional state. Does it really matter?
Does it really matter?
Does it what really matters, right? What really matters is people get their homes rebuilt.
Do you think that that crisis, the whole year you've put in under these extraordinary circumstances, do you think that's given you license, as you suggest, to do things more quickly, to, as you suggest, not be so inflexible in terms of how we apply rules? Has it given people the appetite to say, okay, let's be more forward thinking, let's adapt more quickly? Has it given you that?
Well, humans are humans. So some humans are like, yeah, let's go. And then others are, and fair enough, they've taken a beating. You know what? I just want things to be stable. I don't want anything to change.
So how do you juggle that? You're a planner. You obviously want to build a more resilient community. You want it to be better than it was before. How have you decided where you would push to get the better happen?
Well, I remember when I started in planning school, it was like a new idea that planning was a political exercise.
Right.
Because it used to be, this is a scientific thing and you do your thing. Planning is so political. So A, remember it's a political exercise. B, for me, remember it's the community I'm serving. It's not my agenda. I may know things about where we could push some levers to increase density or fire resistance, but if the community isn't ready, it doesn't actually matter what I think. So if I'm serving the community well, I'm serving them where they are, offering them something just enough ahead that they can reach for it, and it's not so far ahead that it's like, hey, that makes no sense.
Why are you imposing it on me?
Right. So what's suitable for the communities we serve? And every community is going to be different, but we have to discern what is suitable. What's suitable one day could be totally different the next day, right? Because that's also how human beings work. I know when I'm in a situation where I'm grieving, like seriously grieving, minute to minute, moment to moment, I can have like moments of coherence and moments of crumbling.
Yeah.
So there's a great deal of compassion that's required. I would say the biggest lesson for government is look at how quickly we can move when we need to. And some of that is because of, it's a disaster. We need to move quick and we feel that imperative. But when we slide out of disaster, so when I think of myself a year later and I'm thinking, well, what's this work going to be like for the next year? It's going to be reminding ourselves that, you know what? We don't need to overthink this. We don't need to take months to make this decision. We can make this decision in a day or a week. And it's going to be to remind ourselves that, oh, you know what? We did do that. We made good decisions in a week before. Why can't we still make good decisions in a week or a day? Right?
I used to say this after COVID that we had to make very fast decisions during COVID. And so I used to push and say, well, what's the COVID dividend? Can we make decisions quickly when we need to, as we had to during a pandemic, as you've had to now during a fire disaster? And in terms of going forward, in terms of what you're trying to build forward, are there specific kinds of things that you want to see embedded in the community that would make it more resilient to whatever the next stress is? Maybe it's a fire, maybe it's a flood, who knows? Can you do that too?
Well, we just finished our climate adaptation action plan. So we've identified the top 5 hazards for Jasper. Surprise, surprise, wildfires is still one of them.
What else is in there other than wildfires?
What else is in there is wildfire smoke.
Smoke.
Yep. Glacial recession.
Yep.
So the impact of that is less water supply, but also for a tourism economy, if there's less water.
Yep. The tourists stop coming.
The things that people would come and see are not necessarily there. And hail is an Alberta thing. I think hail was in there.
Frogs and pestilence, not in there yet.
Not in there.
Not yet.
Not in there.
But this is the pieces that we don't actually know what's around the corner. So really, that's the thing that's so challenging about resilience planning, I think, is to figure this out. Can I ask you a question about jurisdictional? You talked about planning being political. I didn't know whether you meant capital P or small p, but
all sizes of P.
All that. How have you navigated the jurisdictional overlaps here? Like, I'm interested, who's paying for all the work that you're leading? Which government is paying for it?
So my team is a combination of the municipality and the disaster relief program that's federally funded, and then money flows through the government of Alberta.
Okay.
And then a lot of my colleagues in the Jasper Recovery Coordination Center, that's all disaster relief program funded by and large.
Federally?
Federally funded, but it flows through the government of Alberta, right? So our direct contact is with the government of Alberta.
Mm-hmm. How's that been to sort of navigate that? Because they all have different interests, I know.
Yeah, it's not straightforward. My colleagues that are doing most of that work, like it's delicate for sure. But it is, again, another example of municipalities are creations of provincial government. And it's hard work being a municipality in a disaster situation when communities know what they need and they may or may not get it.
Yeah.
And I'm not throwing shade anywhere other than to say things that everybody knows, that it's tricky business being a municipality, disaster or not, when funds come from other orders of government, and you need to keep those relationships in good shape. But it takes energy and attention to make sure that those relations are good. So that the funds do flow. Otherwise, Jasper or any municipality, any town that is experiencing disaster is like, it's hard and it takes funds. But we throw those funds at the emergencies when they happen. The bigger existential question is, do we have it in us to throw money at improvements that can be made before disaster strikes?
If you had words for your colleagues, and certainly after Katrina, I used to say everybody became a planner. Like, everybody has to be a planner. When you're in an emergency, everybody has to think like a planner. But to all the planners and the would-be planners and the you better think like a planner people out there, what, from your extraordinary experience, which I appreciate you're still in the thick of, but what would you be saying to communities now, particularly ones that are looking at their sister communities saying, look what risk they're in. When are we next? What would you be saying to community folks now?
Take advantage of any and all support you can get for emergency preparedness.
Okay.
There's lots of support out there. Do the work. For planners in particular, run a little scenario where you imagine, for example, a third of your town is gone, and there's going to be a process that's going to unfold on how do you clean up efficiently. And some planners will be working on the cleanup and engineers will be working on the cleanup, but there's permitting involved there, making sure when we rebuild it's not contaminated. There's lots to think through there. Unfortunately or fortunately, there's more and more people out there who can do this kind of work, and it will serve other communities well. I can imagine that there are planner type people that are going to move from emergency to emergency, disaster to disaster, providing these services. Avail them of it. The other piece is to imagine, run a little exercise. If you had to move a ton of permits through fast, how would you change the rules to do that? And think it through and do it now. Because in a normal municipal situation, if you want to change your land use bylaw, you have to do a public hearing for second, third reading. We didn't have to do that because we're in a national park and the authority rests with the superintendent. And the superintendent of Jasper National Park was comfortable making some tweaks to the rule. Any tweaks in any other situation, that would not be the case. So one of the things I would love to offer to planner colleagues is some time and space outside of the workday where you sit down and you run through a scenario and you imagine, okay, this has happened. 2 weeks later, you're starting to think ahead. Okay, people are going to be coming back in town. They're going to start thinking about applying for permits. What are the rules you want to be in place then, and do that work now?
Do you know about, do you have a go bag? Do you know what a go bag is?
I sure do.
Yeah. I think all Canadians need to have a go bag. But we also, I think what you're suggesting is professionals need a go bag. So that whatever function you play in government or in running a business or running a nonprofit or wherever your interaction is with other people, neighbors, that you have thought through what the steps are, what are you going to need, so that if you do get put into a situation, you can implement it quickly.
I think that it's almost the right metaphor or analogy.
Give me a better one.
So the go bag is what I'm going to do when it happens. Like, and being prepared, having a bag ready. I'm going to need X, Y, Z. Like the prescriptions are refilled. I think there's something to do long before then, long before. And it's imagining, like even when we were looking at the Climate Adaptation Action Plan, the mayor says, like, this is all nice to have, a Climate Adaptation Action Plan. And it's useful to think about what are the impacts when something happens. And he says, but we already know. We know what the impact is. Like we're living climate change right now. So way ahead of having the go bag is what really truly are all of the things we need to be doing, both in terms of mitigation when climate events happen, but also, again, way ahead of that, what are the choices we're making in our day-to-day lives that are ensuring we will experience disaster?
You mean the risks we're putting ourselves under, but then the reverse of that would be, what are we doing to prepare us and protect us from disaster?
It's basic prevention, right? And I know humans are most likely to react to the thing while it's happening rather than prevent it. But honestly, I think that's the learning edge for human beings right now, is to notice that, gee whiz, it's so uncomfortable to have to think through if this might happen, or what are the consequences of my actions? Damn the torpedoes, I'm just going to do it anyway. But the truth is, that's so short-term thinking. It does lead explicitly to disaster and our demise as communities one by one, right? Like there are people who have been displaced from Jasper who don't imagine they'll ever come back. There are people who imagine it's going to take years to rebuild. There's some that are starting to rebuild this summer. It's the full gamut. But the truth of the matter is a gem of a community is never going to be the same again. Like the social part of it, the physical part for sure, no worries. But the social part of it, the social fabric is ruptured because people like went to the wind, and that same assembly of people is never going to be Jasper again, which is heartbreaking, right?
But a new Jasper will emerge. You just relayed for me your vacation that you've just come back from. Just describe that, because that's a community that has had to adjust. Just describe where you've just been with your kids.
My kids and I went and did the Berg Lake hike, so 23 kilometers behind Mount Robson. So in the Rocky Mountains, it's the highest mountain in the Canadian Rockies. It's beautiful. Interestingly enough, that trail is just reopened because it had been destroyed a handful of years ago by the atmospheric river. So excessive rainfall and flooding took out a good amount of the trail, and they're rebuilding it. Some of it's rerouted, rebuilt in ways that are more climate resilient. So there we are again, another situation where, in this case, instead of fire, water rushes through, destroys the infrastructure for hikers to move in and out of the terrain, but they're rethinking how they build it. So in the event of another water event like that, the infrastructure won't be destroyed, and then us human beings can keep enjoying the backcountry scenery there. But we didn't build that way to begin with. When something happens that is a step back, we always have a choice to make. Do we rebuild and recreate what we had, which could, all right, let's just keep having climate change happen. Let's just keep building in ways that ensure we have inadequate housing for community members, or we make a choice, and choices always come with discomfort. Do we make the choice to live with some discomfort or a lot so that everyone can be housed, so that we stop contributing to climate change? Because that's what precedes the go bag. You still need the go bag in case something happens, but how do we minimize the impacts of climate change by not ensuring that climate change happens and contributing to it every day?
So let's get a go bag, but never have to use it.
Right.
Beth, thank you for joining us. These are such important lessons for the rest of the country to pay attention to. And it's a work in progress. As you know, resilience, we build it every day. So thank you for all that you're doing for the people of Jasper, but also for the broader community across the country that are coming to terms with what these challenges may or may not look like for their communities. So thanks for joining us. And I look forward to keeping track of the developments as you continue to do it one step at a time, one street at a time, one house at a time, one building at a time. Thank you for joining City Talk.
Thank you.